critical role within the department, but it's one that kind of goes unnoticed a lot because when you're doing the right thing, people don't tend to notice, right? And usually when you think of operations maintenance, you're thinking of sewer stoppages and water main breaks, installing water main. But there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to keep us in compliance. And Josh is one of those gentlemen that actually do a majority of our sampling for the district. And we're talking a lot of sampling. So we sample for hundreds of different constituents and about 100 sampling events plus or minus on a given year. So that's a lot of sampling events. And they're not all the same. They vary drastically depending on the constituent. So take someone that's very methodical and meticulous in their work, and Josh does an excellent job keeping us in compliance and doing sampling. That's not all he does. So for operations maintenance, he does it all. So he's also one of the first guys to always answer the phone, willing to come in for a water main break, whether it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. So you can always depend on him to be there. He's very dependable. He schedules the time accordingly to ensure that we're doing all the samples on time, getting everything done in compliance. And on top of that, he's worked very hard on certification. So above getting just your normal minimum qualifications for the position, he's went above and beyond, not just as a system operator, but he's also recently got his mechanical technologist cert. And so this is just showing how he's trying to broaden himself within the industry and just expand his knowledge. So it's really good to see an operator like him come forward, work very hard on certifications, and broaden himself throughout the whole industry. Currently, Josh has a D3 certification, distribution 3, a treatment 2, a CWA collections grade 3 for wastewater, and then the last there was the one I just talked about, the mechanical technologist grade 1. I'd also like to point out that Josh is very easygoing. He's got a great personality, laid back. He's very respectful for those around him. He gets along with everyone in O&M. And it's been a great pleasure to work with you, Josh, for the last 5 years. We look forward to 5 more years and plenty more. So with that, congratulations on 5 years. And then I'll turn it back to the board to read the resolution and for comments.
Thank you. So we do have a resolution before us. And I can either take comments, because I see a lot of people here that want to talk, or do the resolution to start. Are you ready for the resolution?
Sure.
Okay, so we do have before us a resolution, and I'm looking for a motion to adopt the resolution to recognize Joshua Consalves, System Operator 2 for 5 years of service for Marina Coast Water District. I'll remember that because San Francisco, the sea. We'll try to. Thank you. So we have a first and a second. Now there's times for comments on the motion. If anybody would like to comment. Anybody in attendance on Zoom, if you'd like to talk to the motion, you can raise your hand. And I see Mr. Pineda has his hand, and am I supposed to unmute him? No. So Mr. Pineda, if you unmute yourself, I'm hoping that, there you go. Okay. I'm not doing that. No. I just want everybody knows, not me.
Joe, can you hear us?
Joe, I'm going to come back to you if that's okay. I don't know what I think somebody's trying to.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you. There we go. Perfect.
You guys able to hear me now?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. I want to apologize to Josh for not being able to support him in person, but this cold got the better of me today. But wasn't able to pass up the opportunity to thank Josh for all his hard work and dedication to the district over the past 5 years. It's been a very fast 5 years. I can't believe we're already here with so many operators achieving that 5 years, but I'm very proud of all of them. just wanted to wish you the very best and continued success in your career. And once again, congratulations and thank you again, Josh, for all your hard work.
Awesome.
Anybody else on Zoom wishing to speak? Raise your hand. I don't see anybody stepping forward, and in the room. There we go.
Kurt Gonzalez. Kurt Gonzalez. I work with Josh in the O&M department. And I'd just like to say thank you, Josh. And I appreciate your dedication that you put towards your service within this company. What a well-rounded individual Josh is. Real kind man that he is. Always shows up on time. He's attentive and he appreciates people around him. Josh is a joy to work with. I have yet to even have a confrontation with Josh. Let me know what thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
That's great. We don't know if that's to Kurt's credit or. And I know there's someone in the Zoom, but anybody else in the room would like to
I'd
please?
just like to say that absolutely, since we've had some new members join the team and now they're at 5 years. Josh is definitely the cream of the crop, one of the topper ones. He does an excellent job. He's super dedicated and we're super lucky to have him. So, congratulations on 5
Thank you,
years.
Josh. Those are great comments. Okay, and Jose Rodriguez, thank you for your patience. If you would unmute.
Yes, I'm already on mute. Can you hear me?
And
Yeah, well, I just want to say congratulations, Josh, for your 5 years anniversary. You are such a good friend and a good worker. I think we all feel really confident when you're working with us. I really appreciate all your knowledge and always the effort to work with anybody. And I think we're blessed to have you, on MCWD. Sorry that I can be there, but from home, I tell you congratulations. And, I'm so proud, and blessed to have you as a friend and mainly as a coworker. Thank you.
Director Moore.
Yes, Joshua, I have to agree with Derek's comment that a very important part of your duties goes pretty much unrecognized by the public. Public needs to understand that the system we operate is complex, it's technical. There's lots of places where things could go wrong. You're the last line of defense on our public health. So I very much appreciate the diligence you apply to that, because that's maybe the most important job we do is to protect public health. And in addition, your data goes into the consumer confidence report. And that is how we maintain the public's confidence in our water system. And if we ever lose that, we've got a serious problem. Even if our system's operating perfectly, if the customers don't trust us, we're in big trouble. So thank you for being that last line of defense.
Thank you.
Did you want to, please, Vice
I
President
do.
Schreiner?
Because kind of along those lines, I only learned 3 or 4 years ago when Mr. Cray was interim general manager about the complexity of water sampling. I pictured you just put a cup, and turn the tap, but no. There's a whole list of things. I was asking him about the PFAS alone because the constituent had asked me. There was a whole list of things that the person who sampled it had to go through, 24, 48 hours in advance. It's like a real procedure to even get ready to get the sample. So I appreciate that you're taking those, sort of tiny steps of care to make sure that the district's water is sampled correctly and the samples are kept track of. It must be a huge task, as well as all the other things you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Cortez, anything?
Well, I'm very impressed by you, Josh, by the initiative to take your certificates
Yeah.
and really increase the knowledge base that we have here on the team. And so I want to thank you As Director Moore said, this is a complex system, and if we recruit folks who continue with us and keep expanding that knowledge base, then we can take care of that system and really have that for a very long time. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Director Imamura.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, thank you, Josh, again, for your service to the district. And hopefully this is just the beginning of a very long tenure. And again, looking forward to hopefully meeting you out in the field. Thank you.
So I'm gonna add my last comments, is not only are we so thankful that you take care of our system, but hopefully you also feel that MCWD is taking care of you and giving you the opportunity to continue to learn, be trained, because we would like you to be here when you hit that 25-year mark. And that's the relationship that this board seeks to cultivate in someone like you who's been here for 5 years, to incentivize the reasons why you would continue to work with us. So I'm hoping that we fulfill your career obligations or dreams, as well as you doing the work that we ask you to do. So thank you for participating with that. And I want to say the ultimate compliment is that all of us go home and turn that tap on and we drink that water. Is that really is the ultimate compliment to the scope of work that you do with your team. And I know it's a whole lot of people that go in it, but when you're the one that's saying good, bad, that's a critical position. So clearly we all trust you and thank you.
Thank you.
So now we're gonna take a vote on the resolution. Director Cortez.
Almost there. Yes.
Dr. Imamura,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner.
Yay.
President Morton? Yes. And with that, we'll take a few minutes to read the resolution, and I'll just, Brad, were you able to call it up?
Yes, actually I did.
So we're on page 3, if you would start us on the resolution.
Okay, resolved by the Board of Directors of the Marina Coast Water District at the regular meeting duly called and held on October 21st, 2024 at 920 2nd Avenue, Suite A, Marina, California. Whereas Josh Gonzalez joined the district as a system operator 1 on September 30, 2019. And whereas on April 15, 2022, through his hard work and dedication, Josh was promoted to a system operator 2. And whereas Josh has been an instrumental component to the district's water quality sampling and monitoring program. And
Yes. Whereas Josh's attention to detail and consistency has provided the district with an ongoing positive track record for compliance.
And whereas, in addition to Josh's sampling duties, Josh also performs normal system operator duties, which include water main and service line repairs. And whereas Josh has actively sought out state certifications and currently holds a California Environmental Water Association CWIA Collection System Maintenance Grade 3, CWIA Mechanical Technologist Grade 1, State Water Resources Control Board Water Distribution Operator Grade 3, and a State Water Resources Control Board Water Treatment Plant Operator Grade 2. And
whereas Josh shows up every day with great enthusiasm and is always willing to lend a hand to his fellow coworkers. And whereas Josh's commitment and reliability have made him a great asset to the operation and management department.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Marina Coast Water District do hereby recognize and appreciate Joshua Gonzalez for 5 years of service to the Marina Coast Water District. And we're going to hereby present you with a gift certificate and a plaque. And we wish you continued success and many, many more years with the district. This resolution was passed as of today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You actually get the gifts. So as I said, we're hoping that you will collect a lot of these. And then you'll get the big one that's and there's the money. And that is very nice compliment. Very. 1, 2, 3. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much. I
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Do you want to say anything? Please.
Okay.
So, yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So just roll with it, if they pull it, then we'll just as amended.
Okay, next we're moving to the next item, which is 4B, which is to adopt a resolution to recognize Adam Miller, accounting technician, for 5 years of service to the Marina Coast Water District. And this is being introduced to us by Mary Legasca.
Good evening, members of the board, fellow staff, and the public. I apologize as Adam could not join us tonight. But tonight we celebrate Adam as he marks his 5th year with the district. Adam joined the district back in October 2019 as an accounting technician with a primary focus in accounts payable. Over the past 5 years, he has significantly contributed to the district's financial operations as the district's gatekeeper in ensuring that all financial transactions are adhered to the agency policies. Adam plays a crucial role in managing the financial operations of the district by processing invoices, managing purchase orders for the admin department, and ensuring timely payments to vendors and suppliers. This helps maintain accurate financial records, avoid late fees, and ensure that the district meets its financial obligations on time. Adam is a reliable resource to other departments and vendors. He is a team player and resolves issues or inquiries effectively. His strong work ethic makes him an invaluable asset to the district. And with that, it's with great pleasure that we recognize Adam for his 5 years of service for the district. Thank you.
Thank you. So would someone like to move approval? I'll move approval.
Second.
So we have a first and a second. Now we're going to comment on the pending motion. And while I do understand that, Adam, may I comment first? Is that, I'm sorry. Well, are you saying no?
No, you're.
You gave me a look like. So in any event, it was Professional Water Professionals Recognition Week about a week ago. And I want to say that I was very pleased that Adam Miller actually gave a card to Adam. And I would like to share with you because while he's not here tonight, it is this expression that makes me feel very proud to be the president and very proud to work with all of you. And while he thanked me for his card, this is the part that I want to share. He states, "It is a great pleasure to work for MCWD, and I look forward to many more great years. Please accept my gratitude and appreciation for the work of the board puts to ensuring MCWD thrives." And I really wanted to share that, and I'm sure if he was here tonight, that would be the sentiment also that some of these people, including us, would share with him. So thank you. And thank you, Adam, for your email. So there's a motion pending. I got to make the first comment, but now I'm going to invite additional comments. Board directors? You have a comment?
Go for it.
Vice President Schreiner.
I really enjoy when I cross paths with Adam here at the office. And he's always been so patient and, just he's busy. I don't interrupt him long, but I do remember when we moved into this new office when Laura moved out and now it just seems like he just takes the work very, very seriously and carefully.
Thank you. Director Moore.
So I'll just comment that as the treasurer for 2 nonprofit organizations, the accounting drives me nuts. Trying to keep track of everything, getting the books balanced, balancing the checkbooks, all these sorts of things. I can't even begin to imagine how complicated it is here at Marina Coast Water District with how many 7,000 accounts that we bill or something? I'm sorry, 11,000. I forgot that. But see, I'm a lousy treasurer. I can't even remember the total number of accounts. So, Adam, thank you very much for what you do for us. It is an incredibly complicated process that requires immense attention to detail. And I just hope that you don't get too many migraines focusing on the little fine print and numbers. Focus on.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking at Zoom. I don't see any hands. So with that, nobody in the room needs to add comments. We're going to take a vote.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Cortez.
Yes.
Vice President Shriner.
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes. So for our recognition of Adam Miller, I'm assuming he will get his plaque and his gift certificate delivered personally. But thank you, and Adam, thank you for your service. We look forward to seeing you when you hit that 10 years. Also. So before we break, which I know there's refreshments and we want to honor our guests and take some photos. But I would like to go to the public comment and closed session items. Oh, I didn't read the resolution. Thank you, Jan. I am losing my brain. We got it. Thank you. Okay, Brad, page 7, do you want to read the first 2 paragraphs?
Yes, whereas Adam joined the district on October 9th, 2019 as an accounting technician with a primary focus on accounts payable. And whereas Adam also handles purchase orders for the administration department, oversees the district's prepaid expenses, assets with the fiscal year-end close process and audit, and provides backup support for payroll as needed.
And whereas Adam has been instrumental in streamlining processes related to contract and annual purchase orders, including assisting other departments and creating detailed spreadsheets to facilitate the process.
And whereas he has contributed to document management by helping transition all accounts payable documents to a scanned paperless system. And whereas Adam's extensive accounts payable experience enables him to resolve inquiries efficiently, making him a reliable resource for departments and vendors. And
Whereas Adam's strong work ethic and attention to detail have established him as an invaluable asset to the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Marina Coast Water District does hereby recognize and appreciate Adam Miller for his 5 years of dedicated service to the district. Present him with a plaque and a gift certificate and wish him many more years with the district.
And this resolution is passed unanimously today. Adam, thank you. I'm sorry that I did not get that read. My apologies.
You know what? I don't know. Did he?
yes,
Okay.
We voted, yes.
Yeah.
So let's go to public comment and closed session items. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters appearing on our closed session item may do so at this time. You have up to 4 minutes. And the closed session item is pursuant to Government Code 54956.9. It is conference with our legal counsel on existing litigation. The name of the claimant in the case matter refers to Peter Lay. And if anybody wishes to be heard on this closed session matter, if you would raise your hand, we will acknowledge you. And anybody in the room wishing to be heard on closed session? I'm trying to make sure they have enough time to get those hands up. And I don't see any hands going up on, do you? No.
Oh,
Yeah,
Council Masuda, are you seeing?
well, I was just wondering if you click on attendees.
It is on attendance.
It is. That's what I'm looking at. Thank
Oh,
you.
I see.
Attendees.
So we've all concluded that no attendees have their hand up. We will take a 7-minute break. And in 7 minutes forward, we will be in closed session and the rest of the public and members and employees can continue to enjoy themselves. And I just asked for 1 cupcake. Thank you. We're going to go to closed session after a 7-minute break at 6:30, 6:37. Everybody in closed session.
Okay.
I was supposed to
Okay,
wait for
look,
her.
you got me messed them up. Thank you,
Thank you.
Yabuz.
Okay, we'll do this one more time. We're reconvening after a closed session. And our district council, Roger Masuda, will report out on action taken during closed session.
Thank you, Madam President. In closed session, the board voted unanimously to reject in full Peter Lay's claim dated September 13th, 2024 and October 18th, 2020.
And that was the action taken. Okay, we are now moving on to oral communication. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on our agenda, now's the time for these comments. You have up to 4 minutes. You can comment on anything that's not on the agenda at this time. And I'm looking to the attendees. I do not see any raised hands. Giving you a second. No hands are going up. None of the attendees wish to comment. Does anybody in our chamber wish to comment?
Yes.
Was that yes?
No.
Okay. So no one wishing to speak, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of several items, including the check register, approval of minutes, approval of a water, receipt of a water consumption, sewer flow report, receive the capital improvement program, authorize a professional service contract with Shape and Wheeler, award a contract to Senko Pipelines, application for the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Grant, and an annual review of the district's investment policy. Would any of the directors wish to pull an item? Don't see by giving you a moment. Director Imamura, do you have any item you wanted to pull?
If there's no presentation, I'd like to hear just a brief comment on H.
On H, okay, we will hold on H for consideration. I see Director Vice President Schreiner. Which would you like to?
There was a question, just a quick question on C, page
27.
Page 27, but I think the question was in regards to page 29. You had that question,
It doesn't need to be pulled, that's it.
Not food, but I thought there was a question there. There's none.
It was just a.
All right, all right.
edit.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I actually would like to pull 9E as Earl. And I would like to take a separate vote because I'm going to pull item B, the minutes, for a quick amendment.
So move to approve A, C, D is in Delta, F, and G.
Second. So we have a motion before the board to approve consent agenda items A, C, D as in David, F, G. This motion's been made and seconded. Any comments? Don't see anybody making comments. May we have a roll call vote?
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Cortez.
Yes.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes. So moving now to the board minutes, the draft minutes, which is 9B. There's just one typographical error that I wish to correct on page 25, which I would eliminate the word on Mr. Scherzinger's report that he conducted meetings with all of the PUC staff members, is to delete the word all. And with that change, because he didn't talk to everybody at the PUC, with that change, move approval.
Second.
So we have a first and a second. Any comments on the motion? Seeing no hands in Zoom, nobody raising a hand to be seen here. We'll take a roll call vote on approval of that consent item 9B, approval of the minutes with the one change.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
and President Morton.
Yes, so that the minutes are approved. I also pulled agenda item 9E as Earl, which is the Shape and Wheeler Consulting Civil Engineers for engineering services for the improvements recoding to design project bid support of Reservoir Two. And, so thank you, Garrett Hotel, our engineer, is at the podium, and if I may, so I do understand, I just want to go through this about the expense of different components here. So we recoated the interior in 2019.
Yes.
And this action item is to recoat the exterior in 2025 roughly. Okay, so what is the life expectancy of this tank? Once you've recoated, how often do you do that? Or when this was now, I think it was 70 years old, how long is it expected to go?
At least 10 years.
More.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that the coating can last many decades, or it can be something, given our harsh environment, it can be sooner. But it's one of the things that Derek and his team does is we dive the tanks periodically to make sure the coating's on the inside, and then we do periodic exterior inspections to make sure that coating is holding on.
Okay, so the investment of the coating on the exterior is worthwhile because it's a cost savings in the sense that it'll preserve the life of this tank for at least 10 more years.
At least, yeah.
Okay, then my next question is, because while this not in this bid, it is talked about is putting a mural on the outside. What is the additional cost for putting a mural? Will we know? I'm giving consideration to the fact if it was only gonna live for 5 years, why would you go through additional expense? Depends on how much it is. So my question is along this line. My second component about that mural question, I get this is going to come back. I think when you actually have the work, that we will be looking for information as to the mural. And when you do that mural, does it interfere with recoating in the future? You have to strip that off, or you just put the coating over the top? So those are the things that I'm looking for answers to.
Okay, so what we can do is, this is just for the design contract. Is to put together the technical specifications that we will solicit bids from painting contractors to apply, do the prep work and to actually coat the tank.
Okay.
What we can do in that process is make the mural an additive bid item, so that when I bring this back to the board for approval of the coating, the actual applying of the paint, you will be able to see that as a separate line item in that.
Thank you. And I do understand those were coming back, but part of my question was to give you the chance to answer my question about life expectancy, and the investment of these funds today, or the expenditure agreed to expend these funds today, because it's worthwhile expenditure. So thank you very much. So with that, I would move approval of the item 9E, which is to authorize the professional service contract. Unless anybody else had questions, I didn't see any hands going up. We have a first and a second. Any comments on the motion to approve? Item 9E, no comments. We'll take a roll call vote.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes, and thank you for answering my questions. Then the last item on the consent agenda to be addressed, and Director Imamura, I believe it was you that asked to pull H.
Yeah, thank you. Just had a clarification. So the investment policy, I'm trying to remember, so was approved by the board back in January. Was this just was this brought forth was there any significant changes or anything, or was this just more or less to remind the board of what our investment policy was?
So back in January 23, 2024, I believe we were having, so annually the district investment policy is required to be reviewed by the board and approved. So the last one that we did, I believe we added one additional item as to the list of investments that we could do. But for this year, for the fiscal year 24-25, we are not recommending any changes. So we are adopting the same one that we approved for the 23-24.
So if I just may ask a follow-up question, is it correct that the board mandatorily reviews this policy every year. It comes in front of us as a mandatory requirement of
Yes,
state
according
law.
to according to state law, we are supposed to bring back the investment policy for board's review and approval every year. That's the recommendation.
Yes. Okay. Director Imamura, any other questions?
Thank you for that clarification, and I move approval.
I'll second. So we have a first and a second for approval of the consent item H, annual review of the district's investment policy. Thank you, Ms. Legaska, for walking us through that. And with that, any public comment? No hands going up. Anybody in the room? No hands going up. A roll call vote.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes, thank you. We now move on to our action items, item 10 of our agenda. And the first one is whether or not to accept the annual comprehensive financial report and the independent auditor's report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. Everybody following along, it's on page 67 of your board packet, but you also have a separate comprehensive financial report.
Madam
And
President,
who is going to?
can we delay that item until we get our consultant busy?
Yeah.
Where? Right there in the middle of the, oh, there you are. Sorry.
He's been on there.
Oh, with the halo?
Looking at the participants and I'm like.
Me too, yeah.
All right,
Yes, he is.
I can't see,
fire away.
what is his name?
Sheldon.
Sheldon.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so everybody is present to proceed with item 10A. And Mary Legaska is going to take the lead. Thank you.
So good evening, members of the board, fellow staff and the public. Tonight we are pleased to present the audited financial statements of the district for fiscal year end June 30, 2024. These statements have been reviewed by and audited by Chavan and Associates, certified public accountants, ensuring accuracy and compliance with the government accounting auditing standards. So on March 18, 2024, the district approved a 3-year contract with Chavan and Associates with an option to renew for another 2 years. So this is going to be the first time that they will be doing our audit. We are proud to report that the audit revealed no significant findings, reflecting the district's commitment to maintaining a robust financial controls and transparency. And the audited financial statements are also a testament to the hard work and dedication of the finance department and all other district departments. So I want to introduce Sheldon Chavan, Managing Partner of Chavan and Associates, to give a presentation on the district's fiscal year 2024 annual comprehensive financial report.
Thank you for the introduction, and I appreciate you allowing me to come to the meeting remotely tonight. I just got back from San Diego, so it would have been a difficult turnaround. And so appreciate that, and I will continue forward now to give you my synopsis of the June 30, 2024 audit. And I will say this off the top, it was great working with your team. You have a very high-level team in your finance department, administrative services department, and specifically the accountant, Tamla, was excellent throughout the audit. She did a great job. And so I wanted to give that commendations up front before I get into it and forget later. Now, what I will say this is, keep in mind that the audit is a 4-stage audit, right? And a first-year audit is very difficult. We go through a lot of things that the district had not had to go through since they first changed auditors 6 years ago or whenever it may have been. So when you do rotate auditors, there's a lot more work involved in that first year of an audit. And it includes the internal controls documentation and testing. It's really rehashing all those different procedures and processes that the district goes through on a daily basis. And we do that over every significant transaction class, right? It's not every transaction class, but every significant transaction class. And as you probably know, significance in terms of materiality is a big topic in an audit. So, but kudos to the district, because as we move forward through these phases, going from the internal controls, the testing and documentation of those controls, into the substantiation of the year-end trial balance, we did not have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses to report to the board. Now, though the ultimate goal of the audit is to issue an opinion on the financial statement and let the readers know whether or not those financial statements are presented fairly within all material respects. And so our opinion is unmodified. It's a clean opinion. That's the biggest goal. That's the main objective. The second objective is to tell you whether or not we have any issues with compliance, right? And we issue a separate opinion letter related to compliance. We do not issue an opinion on compliance, but what we do is we'll let you know in that letter whether or not we have significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And of course, as I mentioned, there were not any. Also, keep in mind during an audit that we do not issue an opinion on internal controls unless we're separately engaged to do so. That part of an audit is new, by the way. That's recent accounting standards, auditing standards have now allowed auditors to be engaged to also perform an audit that allows them to issue an opinion on internal controls. Most local governments are not taking us up on that just yet, but I think that's probably a way of the future. It's not a requirement, it's just another option. However, when we go through the internal controls process, we do a fairly detailed job, especially in the first year, of inspecting documentation to ensure we can do our risk analysis. So those are the first two phases of the audit. The third phase of the audit is the reporting phase, and that's where we're at tonight, is the ACRA, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And then the fourth phase is follow-up. So we present tonight and you find something, you see something you don't like, we'll come back and we'll fix that, right? That's the follow-up phase. So with that being said, I wanted to make sure you understood one other concept, and that's reasonable assurance. Keep in mind that an audit is not absolute. It's not 100% assurance, it's a reasonable assurance. So what that means is that we perform our audit under a very high level of confidence, but it's just not absolute. We can't give you 100% assurance because we're sampling, right? We're not looking at everything. We're doing risk assessment, identifying the risk areas, we're identifying material amounts, we're performing the risk analysis to plan the audit and then perform substantive tests on the year-end numbers that go into the financial statements. Materiality is a concept that I mentioned, right? Are the financial statements fairly presented within all material respects? So materiality is a concept that's ever evolving. From an audit standpoint, the standards say we need to identify a number, but we also have to take into consideration what somebody might look at that has nothing to do with the dollar amounts. Qualitative versus quantitative. So we try to encompass that following the standards. We try to encompass what somebody that might read the financial statements looks at and goes, well, it's only $100, but it might mean something to them. That's very difficult to do, but we do try to encompass that. We follow the standards to a T on that. So with that being said, oh, I will say one other thing is that we did not have any audit adjustments that resulted from the audit procedures that we performed. What that means is as we go through, we get a trial balance, the client may go through and true things up as we go along. That did happen. So we had a few cleanup items that the district office did provide us. However, none of those resulted from the procedures we performed. Had there been audit adjustments from the procedures we performed, it's almost essentially automatic material weakness these days. So that's good news. And then we did review the district's going concern. We're required to do that. And did not note that there was a lack of a going concern, which is evident by the ending net position. So with that being said, I don't know if you want to look at any numbers, talk about any numbers at all. Sometimes I'll get into the details of the numbers, sometimes I won't. And as we all know, the net pension liability keeps going up, so that's always a big topic. And then you could also talk about the total OPEB liability and how that moves. So any questions or comments related to the numbers, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Vice President Schreiner.
Thank you. I do have a few questions. I'll just go through them by the page numbers, if you don't mind, if you have a hard copy or if you have the.
I don't know if I have the capability to share my screen. If it helps, I could do that.
As long as you give us the page numbers also as you call out your questions.
So for staff here, page 40, page 40, there's a phrase I'm not familiar with, and I might have been told last year, but I might have forgotten. It's observable versus unobservable fair value. Can you give me some examples?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the most common one is stock market, right? That's observable. So if you own stock in Tesla, you can go observe that and see what that market value is, and then you can adjust your balance sheet accordingly at the end of the year. An appraisal would be something that's not observable. You have to have that done privately. So it's not open to the market. So those are probably the easiest examples.
Yeah, may I ask Steph, if the district has an appraisal done, is it public information or no?
Depends on the purpose.
It depends on the purpose, yes. I mean, if it's to acquire
It's
a piece of real estate, then you're gonna have to give it to seller.
So negotiating contracts and sometimes you can keep it, it's unobservable. Okay. And on page 41, there's a sentence, a third of the way down about management provides allowance for uncollectible accounts related to utility customers and local developers. Is that a board discretion item or that's
That's a management item. So management determines what the allowance will be for and how much that should be. It's an estimate. Board can give management guidance in that area for sure. There are times where I've seen boards that will adopt take internal policies and make them a board adopted policies. Not too often. Larger cities and local governments do that. But really it's a management tool. And so, but board can give direction on that. It just happens to be that for this June 30, 2024, there were allowances made for receivables outstanding for developers as well as utility customers.
okay. I appreciate for the customers, but I'm not too sure about uncollectibles for local developers. So it sounds like I'm just making a note to myself, possible future agenda item, but not for tonight. And then, can you give me an example on page 43? They mentioned this. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Sibita, the SBITA subscriptions.
Yeah,
Is that like
that's typical. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was trying to think of examples. You go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it's typically software. So like an accounting software where you have more than 12 months of you have an annual lease contract you have an annual contract with an amount you have to pay. And it's non-cancelable. So software is the best example of that. And so now under new accounting guidance, the last year, you have to report an asset called a right of use asset and a liability related to that subscription contract. So they essentially
Thank you. And then on page 46, the term constraint or concentration, can you give examples of constraint or concentration?
Sure, yeah. So concentration is going to be, for example, I mean, you can have numerous things that are a concentration for, depending on the type of entity you are and the circumstances of the operations that you're, but probably the best example would be your investments. So if your investments were, your deposits were made into an investment such as just a US Treasury for the entire year or for multiple years, that would be concentrated into that US Treasury. Or if you had invested into a security, a public security, and all your funds are in that security, that's a concentrated security. So instead of it being diversified among multiple different types of securities, it's in one or two securities. That would be a concentration.
Thank you. And then
sorry, I missed the second part of that question. What was the second part of that question? I think I didn't answer it.
constraint and concentration. I think
So yeah, so the constraint would be related to a restriction, for example. So if you had a grant from the federal government, they could put a constraint on how you spend that money. So it really depends on the grant and what you're allowed to spend it on. So that would be an example of a constraint.
okay. All right, good. Thank you. And then on page 67, the OPEB liability has gone down in a way, and it kind of surprised me. I'm not sure I'm following. There's a beginning and an end, right? At the beginning of 2024, it's 2 million, which is the same as the end of 2023, but now it's going down at the end of 2024 to
Right.
1 million.
Yeah, and that happens with these retirement plans because they're all estimates, right? And so what goes into these plans, especially the OPEB plans, PERS when they move around when they move their discount rates around and when their investments fluctuate, but it's the same impact on the OPEB plans as well, except for in this particular case, what we mostly see is that the expected experience is where the most of the estimate changes come from, right? So as you have people coming in and out of the plan, and then as you have the age groups change, and then as you have changes to the OPEB plan itself, the benefits provided, it can impact those estimates. And so you're going to see that if you look at that page 75 of the audit report, you can see that there was a $752,000 decrease to the total OPEB liability related to differences in the expected and actual experience.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And then, page 74, you just mentioned it. I was looking at those percentages for 22-23 and 23-24 of the proportionate share of the net pension liability. Is this an indication that, that too much is being paid, or they're 109% and 116%? How do those numbers?
It's interesting because there's a lot of pieces that go into the net pension liability. But if you were to look at it from the point of view of, what are we actually paying for in our annual required contributions and how that might impact the net pension liability, you could look towards, the amount paid for the employer portion and the amount paid for the employee portion and who's paying it, and see what kind of impact that might be having on the net pension liability. And it's a good example here because when you see that your net pension liability is 109% of your covered payroll, well, to me, typically I'll see that, and it does give me a hint, anyways, that possibly the district is paying for a certain amount of the employees' contributions, right? So that's typically when we'll see that kind of a ratio, the case. But keep in mind, there's all kinds of different factors that go into these assumptions.
Okay, those were mine. Thank you so much for the general and the specific questions.
Absolutely, great questions.
Director Moore?
So roughly, this goes back to the observable and unobservable values are within our net position. Approximately what's the ratio of observable to unobservable within that net position?
I think most of your values are observable, but it really depends on what's in some of those pools too, which we don't really know, to be honest, because we get a pool valuation report that tells us the market value. But they do break it down. There is a breakdown, a chart, for example, in LAIF that shows you what's where, but most of the investments are very secure and they're going to be in observable investments. So I'd say it's less than 5% is unobservable.
So, but isn't our infrastructure mostly in the unobservable category?
So if you keep in mind what we're talking about there, we're talking about cash and investments only when we're looking at it observable and unobservable. We're not trying to go and give your infrastructure a fair value. So what we're talking about is how we're valuing these cash and investments and how we determine fair value. And infrastructure is reported at cost.
So how do we get at, or is it nigh on impossible to get at an accurate estimate of the value of our infrastructure?
Unfortunately, you're asking the wrong guy on that one because I'm all about following the standards, and the standards say reported at cost. However, I'm going to take that back a little bit because the only real way, well, there's two answers to that question. One is when we're this close to it. So let's say you went out and you spent, $10 million in the last 2 years to build infrastructure. Well, that value is probably going to be pretty close to $10 million given CPI, right? But if it was 50 years ago, probably no value, right? Probably looking at replacing that. So that becomes a really long-term game. That's where you got to get the engineers involved because you're trying to think, okay, how soon do I need to replace that infrastructure? What's my long? Is it 100 years? Is it 120 years? What's my long game there? Is it 5 years? And so that's where that value comes into play. That's what depreciation is supposed to help you with. And so that's why we, under accounting standards, we come with, okay, well, what'd you pay for it and depreciate that. But if you really wanted to know value, you got to talk to an appraiser when it comes to infrastructure or an engineer.
And that one is particularly hard for us because we inherited the Army system and it was built over many, many decades. Trying to get that one appraised, well,
Yeah, there's a few rules of thumb that we can use in terms of using the net present value and using our capitalized list, but for the most part, it would be a kind of a wag, especially given the 2/3 infrastructure that we have in the order area.
Well, the good news is we don't really need to know that value because we're not about to put our system on the market.
Yeah. But we do want to insure it.
Yes, good point. Good point.
We want our reserves to cover our highest costs.
Right. Thank you.
Project or structure. You're finished with questions? Director Imamura, did you have questions for Sheldon?
No, actually, I really appreciate the presentation and it was very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's a motion to accept the annual comprehensive financial report and independent auditor report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024 is on the board.
Second.
First and a second, I'm just gonna ask the obvious question. Is when the board action says for the fiscal year June 30th, 2024, but the report says June 30th, 2024 and 2023, is that the same thing?
Yes, we just provide the previous year.
Or to show
historical
comparison?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have a first and a second. Sorry, I'm just asking.
No, you're good, you're good.
We have first and a second. Any comments on the motion to accept the report? I see nobody in Zoom. We'll take a roll call vote.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes, and with that, the annual comprehensive financial report is accepted. And before you disappear, Sheldon, thank you very much for your team. I know your team spent a great deal of time here in our structure meeting with our staff. Your contribution is appreciated. And staff, Mary, we're talking to you. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
Proof is, yeah, that's in your court, girlfriend. So thank you. Yes, so next item on our agenda is adopt a resolution to approve an interfund loan of $11,400,000 at 1% interest to address the recycled water fund carryover liability. And our Director of Administrative Services again will lead us through this item.
So good evening again, board, members of the staff and the public. The item before you is to approve the recycled water interfund loan. You'll just put up my PowerPoint, please.
While we're clicking around, I just want to thank Mr. Hurdle for pinning the presenter or spotlighting, whatever you did, and we did. Thank you.
But the big yellow halo was quite good.
Yeah.
F5. Down at the bottom.
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Do you want me to hit that part?
Down at the bottom. Yep. Bottom right.
I don't see F5.
Back to where you were and then bottom right. Jericho.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
So we do have, I do understand this is technical to look at this, but in the first slide is background history, recycled water financial. Would you like to start this comments? And we each have a copy in front of us.
Okay.
And I think then the slides will catch up with you when you need to get to the more specific. Thank you.
Okay. So I understand that.
Go up to resume slideshow.
Yes.
I understand that this may be a little disturbing or shocking for some. So there are a lot of items that I do want to discuss and go through. So if I might just finish with my presentation before I answer any questions, that would be appreciated. So you all have a copy of the PowerPoint. Just an overview of what I'll be discussing for tonight. I'll be giving a brief background on the history of Fund 05 or Recycled Water Fund. I will be discussing the Recycled Water financial plan. I will be touching base on how this ties to the annual audit. I will be providing our recommendation, and I will be sharing with you our current management practices related to CIDs. Next slide, that's slide number 3. So anyways, recycled water is vital to our commitment to sustainable water. Recycled water allows us to irrigate large pieces of land like parks, golf courses, and crops, and that reduces our need to use potable water. But our recycled water fund has encountered significant financial difficulties over the years. Our cash shortage started even before 2001. In fiscal year 2001, we started off with a negative 33,000 in the recycled water fund. Over the years, that shortfall has accumulated to 11.4 million up to fiscal year 2024. You should have the cash history as one of your attachments on your agenda packet, and that should be on page 75. So when the fund started, it was called Regional Water Fund. So that was the name of the fund up to fiscal year 2009. From fiscal year 2010 to fiscal year 2022, the fund was renamed to the New Water Fund. And in fiscal year 2023, that's the year that Pure Water Monterey project became operational, and the fund was once again renamed to Recycled Water Fund. Next slide, please. So over the last 24 years, the fund has incurred significant infrastructure costs. The shortfall was due to several projects or activities that were not adequately funded, or they did not generate enough operating revenue to cover their costs. The list of activities or projects that we found should be on your agenda packet on page 76. So these are some of the projects that Fund 05 funded over the last 24 years. Next slide, please. So while based on the research, we did generate some one-time revenue from one-time revenue sources like capacity fees, FORA, grants, Modern One cost share. Again, these one-time revenues were not enough to cover infrastructure costs. The projects that we spent on did not achieve actual operational revenue. So these are the things that we found out through our research. Next slide, please. The next slide discusses the recycled water financial plan based on the 2024 rate study. In terms of revenue, we've had some positive updates from our engineering department. We are expecting around 86 meter connections in the recycled water system in the next 6 to 12 months. And that's the breakdown there. Next slide. So next year, we are also expecting to get permitted to use recycled water for construction water. These are all potential additional revenues that were not included in our recycled water financial plan, since these are all new recent developments. So during the time that we were doing the financial plan back in April, May of 2024, we did not have this information. So these are all relatively new updates from our engineering department. And all these additional revenues will help offset the additional debt brought about by this interfund loan. Next slide. In terms of our operating expense, our main expense are debt service and operating costs due to Monterey One for the treatment cost of the recycled water. The debt service payments are mostly due to the 2010 bonds that were used for the recycled water projects. The 2010 bond was later refinanced by the 2015 bonds. So we are paying off those 2015 bonds. And the operating costs are due to Monterey One, again, for the treatment of the recycled water. And the financial plan that was produced by a 2024 rate study already included the 12 million interfund loan that we are proposing. At that time that we were doing the rate study, the shortfall was actually 12.6 million as of fiscal year 2023. So in fiscal year 2024, we had a positive year for recycled water, so that 12.6 actually went down to 11.4 million. Next slide. As for the capital improvement projects, since the financial plan did not factor in a lot of CIPs for the recycled water funds, since the RUAP infrastructure and the pure water monitoring project is still relatively new. So we are not needing a lot of CIP projects for the next few years for the recycled water. So in summary, the recycled water plan of the 2024 rate study assumed a very conservative revenue forecast, minimal operating costs, but high debt service payments. So according to the plan, it identified that we will need to use some of the capacity fee revenue each year to help offset the debt service payments and to keep our rates low. So in summary, that's what the rate study or the financial plan concluded for the recycled water. Next slide. So this graph should be familiar. This is our recycled section. This is on the section 8 of our rate study. Again, the bars are the expenses. The blue bars are the expenses, and the background are the revenues, and the pink one is the capacity fee revenue. Next slide. Okay, audit. So why do I have the audit here? So I'm sure a lot of you are asking, why did the auditors did not find this? Why did the auditors not bring this up? How can we continue to have, how do we continue to get the GFOA award for financial reporting, right? Which, by the way, we just received our fiscal year 2023 GFOA award, which brings us to our 16th consecutive year. So I just wanted to give a brief background of the role of the audit and the auditors. Like what Sheldon mentioned, the primary role of the auditors is to provide an independent assessment of our district's financial statements. The financial statements are the consolidated balances of all our cost centers. For audit purposes, all the different cost centers or all the different funds are similar in nature. So they are all enterprise funds. So they are lumped together. So if you look at the audit, the first part is always the consolidated balances. You don't see it broken down by fund. They provide an assessment on our financial health based on the total values of the district. The distinction between the cost centers is a management/board directive. And that's our ordinance number 43. And then all the short-term borrowings that goes on every year should be, it's in our financial statements. it can be found in the financial statements. It would be on the back portion or it should be on the supplementary information section, the breakdown by fund. Next slide, please. So this is an example of where you can find the interfund borrowing. This is from last year's. And again, it's on the supplementary information section. And I highlighted their recycled water due to other funds, 12.6 billion. That's as of fiscal year 2023. Next slide. So recommendation. The basis of our recommendation is the generally accepted accounting principles or GAAP and GASB number 34 and 38. So GAAP is the accounting rules that we follow. It states that borrowing that is meant to be repaid in a year should be booked under the due to due from entries, which are short-term assets and liabilities. Borrowing that is expected to be repaid in more than a year should be booked under advance to or advance from entries, which are long-term assets and liabilities. And GASB 34 and 38 provides some guidance on the proper disclosure of such long-term borrowing to ensure that stakeholders are aware of the financial health of the entity. Next slide. So our recommendation, so based on the nature of the cash shortfall, based on the nature and the history, we're looking at 24 years. So we are recommending that that we book an interfund loan between the recycled water and the Ord Sewer Fund. 24 years. This is not a short-term borrowing. So we are recommending formalizing the interfund, formalizing the borrowing as a long-term one. So between the recycled water and the Ord Sewer. So why the Ord Sewer? It is the only healthy district fund that can accommodate a receivable of this amount without affecting its operational and capital needs. And historically, when we were doing our research, it's been the Ord Sewer that's been loaning all these funds to recycled water. So it's just appropriate that when we book this interfund loan, then we book it against recycled water and Ord Sewer. So the loan will be for 20 years with 1% interest. And I've been mentioning 11.4. The 11.4 is the maximum amount that we will be booking. Once the board approves this action, we will calculate the current balance as of October. So we will do a true-up and book that amount. So we don't expect it to be any more than 11.4. For sure, it's going to be less. So 11.4 is going to be the maximum number. Since the recycled water fund has a steady income stream now. So we expect that to be less. This loan has already been factored in the rate study, as I mentioned before, and this will not have any fiscal impact on the overall district cash position because this is an internal balance issue. So the overall position of the district in terms of cash is not going to change. This recommendation is supported by the 2024 rate study or the financial plan. And the budget and engineering committee, we've gone through the committee several times and we went through all the discussions and this is also supported by our independent auditor. So this is something that I talked to them and got their approval and their recommendation. So next slide, please. So lastly, this is my last slide. So lastly, how can we make sure that this does not happen again? That's the biggest question, right? And that is why proper monitoring our expenses and revenues and timely communication. Over the last 3 years, if you've noticed, since Ren has started with the district, we have been providing a comprehensive annual budget to the document, budget document to the board. Our budget document, if you look at our CIPs, they're properly listed with the appropriate funding sources. And each CIP has an individual page which gives you a description of what the project is for, plus our 5-year forecast. So the budget that we ask the board to approve is very comprehensive. Funding sources, which is very, very important, is there, description of the project, what is it for, where is it located, what's the plan for the next 5 years. So that's the budget. And then monthly, I do provide a financial report to the general manager and to the district engineer on the statuses of all our revenues, operating expense, and CIPs. So this is something that I monitor closely every month. By doing all this, staff can assess the district's financial performance and stay ahead of potential issues. And this monthly monitoring allows management to make informed decisions, allocate resources efficiently, and implement corrective action. So that concludes my presentation.
Yes, you ready for questions? Director Moore.
So I do have some questions and comments if the board will indulge me. First of all, so for 24 years, in effect, we've been providing money towards the development of recycled water, but haven't had a revenue source for that. And the accounting of how we've provided that money hasn't been really appropriately formalized. Is it a grant? Is it a loan? Or is it a 0% loan? Is that in effect what's been happening?
Yes and no. We've had some revenues come in. Well, first and foremost, when you approve a CIP, right, the funding sources should be identified. So we are not sure, because we've had a difficult time finding documentation on the projects. We're not sure of the funding sources or the plan of where the expenses for the CIPs were supposed to come from. We see, I mean, I have the historical of the last 24 years. So we see the money coming in, the money coming out. So as I showed earlier, we have some grants, we have some forum money, we have some a lot of different things. But as to and obviously in the 24 years, the money coming in was not enough to support the money going out. So
it had to come from somewhere, but the records are a bit unclear.
the records are clear.
The records are clear. The thing that we're trying to correct, Director Moore, is this short-term borrowing.
Right.
So over the last 24 years, and it goes beyond that, right? Our records stopped in terms in 2001. In 2001, there was $33,000 already accrued against this account. What we understand, or what we believe, I guess is a better way to say that, is that the district was engaged in a programmatic project. And that project was changing its spots over time. So at one point it was a recycled water project that was extending a pipeline to the old wastewater treatment plant. That money was booked against this fund, not against a project. So it would appear to us that the intention of the district was to accrue a debt to whatever this programmatic project was, and then to recover that debt from a revenue source in the future, right? Be it some other entity, okay? That project hasn't come to fruition, and what Mary and I are, we have identified and want to move away from is the short-term borrowing, because what happens is the 2-4 and 2-from and 2-4, we get to this January, the money transacts to bring the accounts to zero, and then on the 1st of July, money all transacts and it all goes back. But it means that this negative is riding inside of our books and is never resolved.
Right, right.
So
This will resolve.
this will bring it all the way to the front, turn it into a project, a discrete funding entity. It will tie it to a revenue source, which we now have, and it will mean that we can wash this programmatic thing out of this nowhere land and bring it forward and book it as a liability for recycled water and book it as a receivable for the Ord community sewer. So it just makes everything right.
Yeah, okay, and I don't disagree with that. If you'll indulge me a little background, and I'll go back about 30 years.
Oh,
when I first got on this board, and I asked Dave Foote from Schaff and Wheeler, our then consulting engineer, because we had no Garrett, how long before our wells are going to be affected by seawater intrusion and we can no longer pump potable water from our wells? Dave Foote said to me in about 1994, oh, I give us about 5 years. And that put a bit of a fire under the board. We need something. So in that early to mid 90s, we built a 300-foot desalination project that you all know about. But you may not know, we also built a 300-acre-foot per year tertiary treated recycled water project and delivered recycled water to Laura Jean Tate Park and the landscape areas for the development right across the street. And we put in a couple of places where developers could get construction water made of recycled water to use on their projects around town. And as far as I can remember back 26 to 30 years ago, they were booked as projects, they were built as projects, they actually had some revenue coming in. Now, given what they cost to own and operate, I doubt that what we were charging the city for recycled water on Laura Jean Tate Park recovered all of those costs. And that was a subject of discussion, because if we were to price the recycled water at its full marginal cost to recover all those costs, the city would say, well, your recycled water costs us $50 an acre foot, and your potable water costs us $2 an acre foot. So guess what we're going to buy from you? Turn off this recycled water. And yet, why were we trying to build recycled water? It's to postpone that 5-year deadline that we thought we were going to be subject to losing our potable water wells. So we've never really been able to come up with a consistent board position on to what extent should our potable water users help fund this recycled water, which will help extend the life of potable groundwater. I don't know that we have even today, and I don't know that we could ever come up with this. Oh, well, you ought to pay for 50% of it, or you ought to pay for 32% of it.
I can tell you now, Director Moore, that recycled water customers are paying the full going concern for providing potable water.
Right, we've finally gotten to that point, but we've got this now $11 million bogey that we've got to deal with, that accumulated over time. So that's just a little bit of explanation of why we might have ended up where we're at. And thank you, RIM, for getting recycled water being sold to Bayonet and Black Horse, and moving this forward with hopefully these 60 plus other connections in the very near future. So we'll have a better, more solid revenue source to pay this off. And I like the idea of booking it as a loan. Are we doing them a favor by giving them a 1% rate? I suppose, yeah, maybe that's the degree of, given current interest rates, but current interest rates we know aren't always at 4 and 5%. I can remember not too long ago when they were 0.5%. Anyway, I do have one other quick question on your slides. The PowerPoint, or excuse me, the graph had a couple of terms in there I didn't quite understand. If we get back to the graph, I'm this guy, page 10. So, can you further explain existing rate revenue, additional rate revenue, and non-rate revenue in this.
Okay, so you're talking about the green background.
Yes, those
So,
three green levels,
yes, so
different
the-
greens.
Yes, so the first set of green near the bottom is the non-rate revenue. So these are the money like interest income. These are other revenues not coming from the rates. So we should have, aside from interest, we have some rentals, we have some. So these are all the others.
So we're going, I'm sorry to interrupt, we're going to allocate some of that non-rate revenue to recycled water, presumably.
This whole plan is recycled water. So recycled water, let's say interest, right? Recycled water is earning interest from its own money. Let's say the capacity, no, not the capacity, that's not part of it, but recycled water is generating some non-rate revenue. This whole thing is for recycled water.
Right, but we don't have any leased recycled water facilities.
No, she's talking about the interest on the operating income, so we're making about $1.2 to $1.3 million a year.
Okay, so it's just interest on what we are now collecting.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
got
leave
it.
it interest on cash.
Right, then existing rate revenue versus additional.
So the next set of green is the existing rate revenue. So this is the graph when we were doing the rate study. So the light green there is the existing rate revenue. The dark green is the proposed 5%, the one that we just approved.
Okay, got it. From the, all right, thank you. One more question.
Question,
Yes, I do.
please. Vice President Schreiner?
On page 6, you mentioned some new meters, maybe as many as 86 new accounts in 6 to 12 months. I forgot about this, or I don't remember hearing about this when we were talking in the.
Yeah, so this is the very, very fresh updates from engineering. I just got this a few days ago or last week.
That's great.
So we were asking them an update on the recycled water. So these are the additional potential meters that we will be connecting with the recycled water system in the next 6 to 12 months. So they're working on this right now.
And were these potential revenues incorporated into that?
No,
Rate?
no, because when we did the rate study, that was back in April and May.
Yeah,
So these were not even factored in. So this is good news. This
Yes.
will help us.
yes. And as they come online, oh, did you want to put a caveat or something?
No, and I'm sure Mary is aware of this. So in the section 8 of the rate study, there was 23 meters was considered what the growth, so this exceeds what the rate study thought. So our projection will be better than what we thought of in the rates.
And are you, I mean, maybe you haven't even had time to discuss it as a staff, but is this going to allow this loan perhaps to be paid more quickly than we are right now projecting?
If the board should choose to accelerate its payment schedule, it could.
Yeah, that was exactly the question was, will we maintain the same amortization schedule on the loan or accelerate it? And I'm assuming in part that's part of a budget discussion when it comes to us in the budget process in spring. And that decision, whether there's other needs for money or.
If this materializes, then we can have that additional discussion during budget, accelerate the payment or use less capacity fees to help.
Okay, and then I want a little comment, but yeah, those are my questions. Listening to you and the history of hoping and planning, but not quite achieving until more recently. Now maybe some of those comments, we had a ribbon cutting kind of a ceremony, and I was likening it to be one of the river kayaker that was down in a hole and not sure of the exit strategy. And so surviving that and finding a way that we are finally getting potentially customers is, to me, it's a huge relief and a lot of work, I'm sure, by people who are not even here with us right now, but who are still here with us, trying to make this work. Thank you.
Quick questions?
Yeah, I have
Director Cortez?
just wanted to follow up on Director Moore's comment about the 1%. I wasn't sure where the 1% came from, so if you could just help me clarify the 1% interest rate.
It's
Yeah,
just an
so I just got-
assumption.
Yeah, it's an industry practice to make it 1%. It can't be, you don't want it to be ridiculous, but at the same time, it shouldn't be burdensome. And so in my practice in the past, mostly it happened in city government where enterprises are loaning money to other funds. And just the general practice was to make it 1%.
And so that, whatever that 1% is, that can have been used for anything, right?
Yep. Yeah, these are coming out of unrestricted dollars, and so they go back as unrestricted dollars.
Thank you.
Follow up, sure,
So I just
Director
want to point
Moore.
out that that 1% can at least be reasonably justified by noting that some of our staff is going to spend some time managing this loan. Right, so there's going to be some real costs associated with doing the accounting and the paperwork, so the 1% covers. Maybe.
I look at it, we're paying interest to ourselves. We're charging ourselves and paying it to ourselves. It's just going from one character and one account to the other account. And the fact that it's been juggled for 24 years, the 1% seems like a fair return for waiting 20 years to get the full repayment. Director Imamura, do you have a question?
No questions, but again, I really appreciate the presentation by Mary, and yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but again, I really do value all what Mary does and with her staff, and again, I'm just in awe of every meeting we have. Something comes up that we do need to recognize the value of our accounting and financial management group. Thank you.
Okay, with no further comment, a motion?
Move approval.
Second. Okay, so we have Director Moore moving approval of the interfund loan. That's the second by Vice President Schreiner. Any public comments? I don't see any hands in the attendees. Any comments? Don't see any further comments. We're ready for a roll call vote.
Director Moore,
Yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Vice President Schreiner,
Yes.
President Morton.
Yes, and thank you to our Director of Administrative Services for that explanation and follow through. And then now with that, we're moving next to item 10C, a resolution to amend the board conference line item in the fiscal year 24-25 budget, and our general manager, Rem Schertzinger, has taken the podium.
Not willingly, no. Only because.
That's why I was double
only because
checking.
the
What
board-
item are we on?
board Policy says so. Right, so staff recommendation this evening, board staff, the public. Thank you, recognition to M1W for being in the room, and thank you for all your help with the special water. Is to adopt resolution number 2024-59 to amend the fiscal year 24-25 budget conference board of directors. The request pursuant to board policy is that the general manager would request any additional funds required by the fund to take care of any conferences that the board would like to go to. Most recently, there was a request by Director Imamura to attend the Aqua Conference in Southern California. The Budget and Engineering Committee approved up to $700. That does not cover the full cost of the conference, and so the request is to add another $1,500 to the conference budget and allow those funds to be spent in the future. Currently, the reserves are set at $4.275 million. This would withdraw $1,500, leaving us $4.274 million in the account, and increase the conference board of directors budget to $5,000, essentially leaving $1,000 for each board member to use in the course of this fiscal year. And in the future, we will bring this specific item to the board at the time we set the budget, so the board members can decide on what the per member value or that they want to put into the budget for the future so that we can compensate or prepare for requests as we move through the fiscal year. With that, I'll take any questions.
There's no questions from council directors here. Director Imamura, did you have questions or for Ren?
No, I appreciate General Manager Scherzinger to recognize the need to increase the budget. I just want to reflect back when I first came on the board. It's almost 2 years ago now. There was in my just my personal experience was that there were no set direction in terms of education or continuing education for board members. Now I realize that there are board members that have been on or seasoned board members that have been on for a number of years, and maybe they don't seem to see the value of someone who's just come on like myself. And I'd like to recommend that we take a much more long-term and definitive approach in terms of when new board members get appointed. For example, this upcoming election, we're definitely going to get at least one new board member. And so do we just assume that they know what's the duties of a board member and what they need to know? And the only way you can do that is by going out and talking with other agencies, other board members. I've gotten a lot of value out of meeting other board members from other agencies. And but again, we still lack that direction when we again have new board members come aboard. We just can't assume that they're getting their knowledge and education through osmosis. So I still feel that this is woefully the allocation is just based on what we have to decide. We decide millions and millions of dollars of expenditures almost every board meeting, and yet our budget for education is it's ridiculous. It's like 1 penny to the $1,000. I mean, I'm being facetious, but I don't even know where this number comes from, because it doesn't even cover a lot of the basic expenses, especially registration and of course other expenses that are involved with making sure that board members are well educated. And myself, putting on my ratepayer hat, I'd be concerned about where board members are getting their knowledge from. So anyway, that's just my comment. And again, I appreciate the effort that we need to do. And I'm hoping maybe the finance committee will come up, and maybe we need to come up with another committee, the education committee or something, to make sure that we have at least a minimum amount of knowledge for our board members. I mean, we owe it to the ratepayers. Thank you.
You'd like to? Vice President Schreiner?
I'm just wondering if we made, as a district generally, clear about the possibility of the free trainings that CSDA, California Special Districts Association, provides through webinars. I've attended a couple, and I tend to go to trainings that are local. I did early on go to Sacramento once, and that was because we had an RDP panel that I thought was going to be very interesting. So I actually made that trip, but for the most part nowadays, you can't even get things so much recorded from the Zooms. Back in those days, we weren't doing the Zoom so much. When we had the RDP, it was in person or nothing. But yeah, I just feel like there's so many ways that I've taken advantage of local trainings or webinars that are either low expense or very low cost. And I don't know if the other board members have had time, but I don't think that anybody's being discouraged from getting more training. But have we, as a district, made it as part of the orientation, like what available trainings are for free or for local?
Well, the ad hoc committee, 12 months ago, give or take, took that up and it's been incorporated into our onboarding policy. And it was, in direct reflection on, Director Memora coming onto the board. And so, I think staff's gonna internalize a lot of the commentary and we'll make sure that as these trainings come up, we will do a better job broadcasting it to the board and making sure that one, that the pre-trainings are known and that we can help facilitate that for you, but also making sure that if there are funded trainings that the board would like to attend or would like a member to attend, like Aqua or like the CSDA, SDLA stuff, which I strongly recommend, that those funds are there and available for the members to attend.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I do appreciate the comments of Director Imamura and trying to get board members up to speed. But I also want to acknowledge that our legal counsel has educated board members and that we have done education on issues as it's coming forward in a lot of aspects, the 218 process, as we did our rate study, that there is a tremendous amount of information by experts that come stand at this podium and educate us as we go through decisions. And so I want to be sure that the public understands that all of us come to a board meeting, that we've read our materials, we've had available to us staff to answer questions that we have posed even prior to the meetings, and that our legal counsel and our management team have tried very hard to make sure all of us have the information so we are making informed decisions. Can we do better? Yes. One of the things that we talked about in the Budget and Engineering Committee meeting was Aqua has all of their materials from a conference that's coming up in December, that for a charge of $250, the MCWD can acquire that entire portfolio, and that would be made available to all 5 directors. I do think that those are things that we now are more aware of, that there is a demand for and interest. And I thank Vice President Schreiner for sharing that she sought that out individually, and you had that inquisitiveness and drive to go do that. That's to be commended. But I also think that to the commitment that's just made at the podium to give us further insight direction, because I find those emails that I get as a director, you know, it's all over the ballpark. And to bring that in with some more focus when something comes across that is beneficial for an organization like MCWD, to have our management team point that out. So thank you. So Director Immer, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to follow up with kind of a comment that the general manager had made with regard to, I want to equate that because we require staff to keep up their education. In fact, we require that they get certification. So, but we don't have that requirement for board members. We don't have any requirements that they go out. And I'm certainly not in a position to assume that I know the comfort level of what an individual board member is. I mean, we can point them in the direction, and I've heard about webinars and online things or whatever, but again, I'm certainly not going to dictate something. It's individual to each board member of how comfortable they feel about a subject or wanting to gain more experience. And again, that's my own personal feeling about it. But and I understand that the board will set what they feel that they want in terms of a budget. But again, when you talk about even $1,000 or $1,500 per year for education, with the way things cost so much nowadays, I think that's it's almost, I don't know, it's not even making an effort, I think. Anyway, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Did you have a comment? Thank you.
I'll move approval of resolution 2024-59. That's helpful.
I do have a clarifying question.
Yes.
General Manager, do you know over the last 2 years, how much of our funding that we use for conferences, did we use all of it?
Yeah, I think so. Last year we consumed it all, right? But it was
Very,
$2,000.
yeah, over the that's where that's the basis of the budget for fiscal year 25. I do look at the historical expenses for the board conferences, and we've been low, like 1,000. Last year was high, 1,200, I think, but previous years barely 1,000. So that was my basis as I was doing the budget and if I get more information that the board members requesting, then I added more. So this year I added more. I made it 3,500, but historically we've not spent a lot on conferences for the board.
Thank you for that.
Okay, so you have a motion, go ahead,
Sure,
but we don't have a
motion.
second as yet, yeah.
I do have another question. So, this is such a small, as Director Morris pointed out, it's a very small budget line item. And I don't know that we could do this tonight, but maybe we ought to consider giving the general manager, since the general manager has, for example, on his own say-so, up to a certain amount of authority to engage, say, consultants. Maybe we ought to give him the authority to authorize director trainings, and then we don't have to necessarily, anyway. That's not on tonight's agenda.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, it's going to the side of the agenda, but also I do want to indicate that we've all received our ethics training. We've all received our harassment training. All of those are expenditures that the district is paying as mandatory training for directors and not coming out of this budget line item. This budget line item is focused on discretionary use by 5 directors who say, yes, I've gotten my instruction from what's provided by the district in its totality to all 5 directors and staff for some of those things. We also don't have in there what it costs for our legal counsel to train us all on the Brown Act and to train us all on a 218 process. We spend thousands on training our board. And that's where I'm trying to get, and that's what the budget and engineering, when this was considered, was what's reasonable, what's fair for discretionary choices by board members. And the point is made today that what's before us is to increase this by 1,500, which gives each board member of the current board in this fiscal year, I know we might have 2 other people coming in, but that there is $1,000 per person. And the fact that this might be an item that can be taken up in the budget presentation for the next fiscal years. And all of the discussion that's had the different viewpoints from the 5 directors sitting here today, and there's going to be 2 new directors, will have to be weighed. But that's not what's in front of the board today. But I do want to give that there's a great deal of expenses paid for board training. I want the public to understand that.
That's good.
Thank you.
Motions.
Okay, so we have a motion. Does anybody want a second? Brad, your hands up?
I move approval.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. Are we done with the discussion? Anybody in public comment? Yes, and I can't tell if there's someone's hand.
That's Director Moore's hand.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I appreciate Director Morris' comments. You know, frequently we'll take some of our board members to conferences. And, you know, granted, most of the information they probably get through the agency or the district's, council and education. But it's also a great opportunity to network with other directors from other agencies. And so, and I can just comment that a lot of times these registrations just to attend the conferences, $900 just to get to the conference. And so, I know our agency has line items for our directors to go to conferences, and we encourage people to go, and a lot of times they can't just do it. due to other commitments. But it is a good use of funds for networking and just seeing what other directors are facing across the state. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any hands up in the room or on the Zoom, so we'll take a roll call vote.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Director Imamura,
Yes.
Director Moore,
Yes,
Vice President Shriner,
Yes.
and President Morton.
Yes. So the motion passes unanimously to increase the education conference fund for directors by $1,500 for this fiscal year. And that concludes our action items. We are now moving on to informational items. District Council's report, we're going to receive a report on the Levine Act,
Yes.
and it's titled.
Thank you. But it's very complex, so I'm just gonna do an overview. And we may wanna revisit this, at the November or December meeting.
Mr. Masuda, is this training?
This is training.
Okay, I just want to confirm for the public.
Oh, we don't have a copy for Director Imamura.
Oh, yeah, you want an extra copy?
Can you share it?
Well, we need to.
Yeah, we're gonna, one of the reasons I'm passing it out now, the general manager wanted to make sure that everybody was sort of gonna get it at the same time, including the two candidates.
Brad, it's gonna get sent to your email, sorry.
Two candidates.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah, because this applies to the candidates too.
There's
They get
3
one.
candidates, one in the room now.
Yeah, right. So the Levine Act is actually from the 80s, but the legislature and the infinite wisdom in 2023 made it applicable to all elected council members, city councils, board of supervisors, and special district directors. So what it tries to do is prevent directors from being unfairly influenced by campaign contribution. This is the pay to play politics things that they're trying to tamp down on. So because of the upcoming general election, Aqua and other agencies have sort of promoted that this should get out to all directors or special districts. What it does, it prohibits a director and the candidates from accepting, soliciting, or directing a contribution more than $250 from a party that's participating in proceeding before the public agency, like getting a license, permit, approval, contract, and for 12 months after they actually get the contract or the approval. So it's very complex. In reviewing this, this is under the Fair Political Practice Commission. And so the FPPC staff puts out a handbook, and they have an example that's incorrect.
In the handbook?
In the handbook. The other interesting thing, Best and Krieger is probably normally considered maybe the expert on this. And they came out, legislature passed 2 Senate bills that are effective January 1 of 2025, and they citing to the wrong Senate bill. It's one of these things. Why does the legislature adopt 2 Senate bills and covering the same thing? And I'm still not sure why they did that. But when you read the fine print at the end of the bill, it says that the bill that was adopted first, in other words, the governor signed it first, is the law that went into effect. Well, Senate Bill 1183 was signed by the governor first. Senate Bill 1243 was signed second. So in accordance with the wording on the statute, Senate Bill 1183 is the law, but the best and trigger article is quoting Senate Bill 1243. So, this is, it's very hard to regulate things. And then what made it more complex is that in Senate Bill 1183, as of January 1, 2025, they upped the limit from $250 to $500. So anyway, what I did, just to give you a flavor, if you go down to the bottom of page 1, I gave an example using today's meeting. So if the board was scheduled to vote today in awarding a non-exempt contract or entitlement today, then any director received more than $250 in campaign contributions between the 12 months before October 21, 2023, and today, from a party or agent of the party that was actually awarded the contract today, the director must publicly disclose that before action is taken. And if they receive more than $250, they have, and they want to participate, they have to declare on the record that they're returning the entire contribution within 30 days. So it's, and the other thing to remember, this is the campaign contribution side of it. The district staff really has no, control over that. We don't get your campaign contribution disclosure. So it's really on the directors and candidates for directorship and the people that make campaign contributions to be aware of this law, as opposed to the gift things. You fill out your form 700, so we know what gifts you receive, and that's the other side of this is the form 700, the gifting. You're prohibited from getting gifts, so that's the other side to remember. Okay, so
just you gave us this example, so
Yeah.
today, that you said exempt contract, non-exempt contract, just the Schaefer and Wheeler, if Schaefer and Wheeler had made a campaign contribution
right.
more than $250 to anybody that was running for office.
Well, no, that votes on, that can vote on it today.
Okay, that's,
Right, and that
but
was,
within the last year.
within the
So
last-
if they had given a campaign contribution in the 2022 election, inapplicable.
right,
So it would only be if a campaign contribution was in the 2024 election, because we're within the year, that would have to be disclosed. And to vote, if you were on my board, I'm gonna use Tom as an example. I'm not picking on Tom. But Tom is an example that he's campaigning. So in the contract we awarded tonight, if Schaefer and Wheeler had given him $250, he cannot participate in the vote.
well,
Unless he's,
more than 200.
oh, so $251, so $251, then he has to either just recuse himself, he doesn't need to say why,
Right.
or he does say
Well,
why.
he should say that he got campaign contribution.
Okay, I'm trying to have us so we all understand this, just walk through an example. So Tom would disclose, I got $251, I am going to give the money back in 30 days so I can vote today, correct?
Correct.
Or he recuses himself. And if he got $99, he doesn't need to tell us, talk about it, and he could have voted on this contract.
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And the contract would have to be a non-competitively bid.
Oh,
So if it's competitively bid, now, we do sole source contracts, we do, we select, contractors because they're approved contract, those are really competitive, so that's why it gets really sort of sticky. Now, one of the things we're gonna do, the next step is we're gonna have disclosure forms made up for when there's gonna be a contract award, that we would have the contract, the bidders fill it out, because you don't know if it's gonna end up being, you think it's gonna be competitive. There's only one person that bids, should that. It gets really, and, the counties are already doing this. They have forms, we're gonna just adopt forms that counties use. And there's this issue of actually disclosing it as an item on the agenda. So it gets a little complicated. Now, what they're doing though is that as of January 1, they're raising it to 500, but the 250 would still apply to the 12 months received. I've seen faces, it is very complicated. And the obligation is really more on the director than they are, because we don't know if you have gotten.
Unless you
staff does not want to know whether you've gotten.
Director Moore?
Well, I don't know, Mr. Masuda, whether this will simplify your life or not, but in the last, for sure, 3.9 years, I have received no campaign contributions whatsoever. I will not accept any campaign contributions during this campaign season. That being said, I will disclose that 3 developers with projects within our district have authorized me to install a campaign sign that I paid for on their property. Does that have some monetary value I've got to get an appraisal for and figure out whether that's above $250?
Well, one of the things that Mike is here, I just realized, and Best Krieger's their attorney, they're there. This applies to inland water.
Right.
That's why he's here.
Yeah.
He's learning.
He's getting trained.
So, there's a certain water company that makes contributions to members of the inland water board that board members need to disclose.
Wow.
Well, again, I've not gotten any contributions. I'm not accepting any contributions, but I would like an answer to the question about, do I need to value, is placing a campaign sign with permission of the developers, that's
So I can give you an opinion, but it's not, this, if you really want an opinion, you go to the FPPC and ask for it.
Okay. I'll contact the
But
FPPC.
certainly, yeah.
And Tom, when I used you as an example, I wasn't saying you had done anything.
No, I know you weren't, and I figured you weren't throwing me under the bus, but,
I was.
okay.
Are we going to example 2 or are we?
Well,
Clear.
example 2 is really for if any of the candidates other than Director Moore get elected, then they just need to be aware of that. It is 12 months before, even though they weren't on the board, it's 12 months before they actually come, before the item is being voted on.
So then to this point, that this would be in our director training program.
Yeah, this would be part of the,
Yeah. Right. We'll make sure it's sent out to the other 2 candidates tomorrow.
cool. And, like I said, maybe, if you have questions, well, that you might want to have, maybe this after the election. Some questions, but like I said, it's very complex, it's nuanced.
It is.
This is California, so labor contracts are exempt. But then you always have to remember, you have personnel actions under labor contracts, which aren't exempt. Somebody, a union member appeals a disciplinary action to the board that may, that's one of the issues I need to find out. Some expert at see whether, even though labor contracts are exempt, if you're having if you're disciplining a union member, does union political campaign contributions to the director, you have to go through this disclosure and recusal? I mean, this is a problem with, and the laws that Madam President is trying to define something that's, you can't define all the evils very well. This tries to do it, but it's just very complex.
Any other questions?
Please, I mean, I appreciate that it's complex and it's a little intimidating. I appreciate you trying to simplify it for all of us to understand, but I really appreciate people are trying to figure out how to separate money from decisions. Not easy.
Yes.
I appreciate that's the goal, even though it looks like pretty messy right now. But I think as we work through some more examples and maybe ask the FDPC sometimes for specific questions that come up, the intent is to clean it
Well, like
up.
I said, they got an example on
Yes, I think more examples are needed. Like, well, I mean, things that came to my mind first were even infrastructure agreements, but that's definitely not gonna be part of it because it's not
No,
competitive.
infrastructure agreements are covered.
Yeah,
It's entitlements.
yeah. More like things we just approved an emergency contract, 3 different contractors. It would be more like if some of them had donated a bunch of money. Hypothetically, I'm not aware of anybody donating money. And it's in-kind donations as well. For example, I
Well,
just heard of.
you would value it, I would
That's direct
assume
to
it's the form 700 valuation standards. So.
Right. It's a
So
good
if you get,
attempt.
if you get World Series tickets.
Director Imamura?
Not to make light of this, but this is a perfect example of why we need more training. And I forgot to mention, can maybe staff or maybe the committee do a very quick assessment of maybe some of the other districts and how much they spend on their continuing education for board members? I'm just curious. I want to see where we stand in terms of what they're allocating and how much importance they put in making sure the board members are educated. We certainly want to make sure that the staff is, because like I said before, and I repeat myself, we send them to get special licenses, continuing ed, but yet we seem to neglect board members and assume that they're going to get their information again through osmosis or reading articles or doing webinars online. So anyway, that's enough. That's enough for me talking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Whoops, sorry. You're not done, Roger. You're slow at that raising.
I am. So Roger, just out of curiosity, if you were given this Lavina Act training, how much would your firm charge an agency?
I don't know. We spent a heck of a lot of time on this memo and we're not charging.
Okay, but let's say let's say I was an outside agency, how much would you be charging us right now?
I know after the work we did, we could probably do it like $5 per person.
At
Whatever our low rates.
I just want to go back to our President Morton. There is training that the agency is providing our board of directors, and so we have to be cognizant of that. And discretionary fund does not equate knowledge base, and so let's keep that in mind. This is actually knowledge that we received. We got something very specific. It's indirect costs that we won't see in the budget, but thank you so much for letting us know.
Thank you.
Thank you. General Manager's report, that would be you, Ron.
Yes, So to let this poor gentleman, thank you for coming back, Mike, go home this evening.
Oh, is that what we're?
We wanted to make sure that the board knew that with our partner at M1W, and I'm sure that Mr. McCullough and his team was instrumental in applying for this. Thank you to Mike and to Rachel. This is the Recycle Water Customer of the Year. Yes, we are a customer, and yes, we are an owner. So we kind of sit in both places, but MCWD and Monterey Peninsula Water Management District and Cal-Am all received this award from Water Reuse, and they came and gave it to us here, and we had our picture taken, we put it in the paper. So thank you to our partner agency, and congratulations. No,
I have it, but.
no.
You want
Thanks,
to-
Mike. Set up.
Very happy.
Are we
Very happy.
seeing this
Yeah.
next week, Mike? Do I need to wear shades?
It was a good take.
Okay.
It was a good sport.
Are you gonna make it?
Yeah, we'll have to watch it. Yeah, it's glass. Anyway, thank you to Everyone Water. Thank you to
Thank you
Paul
for
and his
coming,
team,
Mike.
and especially Mike and Paul and his team.
Is that gonna be kept here? or-
Yeah, that's ours.
No, that's ours.
And we're gonna engrave owner on it too.
Yes.
Right? Because we've already had at least one award with you, right?
Yeah.
And then now we get an award as customers. We're doubling up on awards.
Yeah, so we did design.
Oh, that was really, I thought it was gonna hit the edge of the table, like your gag over there was gonna snafu you.
It's all funny until O&M
Yes,
breaks it.
that's it. And they
Welcome
think,
to my life.
and they think they can
Can't
repair
repair.
it. That's the
Oh,
thing.
snap, well done, well done, well done, well done. All right, so other things, you know, we continue to work with Salinas Valley, groundwater basin. That relationship continues to mature. Just so you know, Patrick and their team are putting together a water conservation program that will extend beyond the district. So we'll be providing services to them in that way. And then also we continue to move the grant stuff forward and trying to figure out how we can make the best use, fiscal use of the grant funds that we have, and how the two agencies can work hand in glove as we move not only within the Monterey Subbasin, but also in the 180-400 where we have also interest. I had the pleasure of presenting to the Seaside Water Master Ad Hoc Water Replenishment Committee. That was an exciting meeting where the committee was definitely interested in receiving a proposal from the Water District on waters that may be available to the Seaside Basin for its use in providing protective water levels for the basin, which is important to us because their basin, in some cases, flows into our basin flows into 184. So looking forward to developing that proposal and continuing to move forward with the other participants in the Seaside Basin, looking for opportunities to bring additional water supplies to our communities. I am pleased to report that PG&E has landed its electrics onto a 182 and that the teams have begun to put water into our tanks.
I thought we were gonna be there.
Well, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. The
They put
party,
the water in already?
oh, they're full. So we backfed them. No,
They're not in service.
they're not in service, nothing's happening. We just need to put chlorine in them. So
Ah.
it's coming, we're gonna have a party, there's gonna be a brass plaque.
I wanted to hold-
It's not
I
like-
wanted to be part of when it was filling,
Oh.
yeah, like filling your
I wanted to
swimming
hold the
pool.
hose.
Yeah.
Filling.
You on top?
See that, no, just see that first drop go in there, that would been monumental, I mean, that's the bigger exciting part. It's filling.
I know, I think for me, it's turning on the pumps. Hearing those
Okay.
babies kick on and start to work. Yeah, I have a good story about that sometime. California Avenue, we found all the leaks.
Oh,
It's
good.
pressure tested, and we're ready to go into service. So, thank you to the board for, our emergency purchase of all the pipeline and being flexible in that space, and that's $500,000. It's now in the ground, it's operating, and it's making sure that we don't have to use two beleaguered pieces of pipe to get water where it needs to go. I'm also pleased to report that the IOP B-side project is out to bid, and we will have that under contract here shortly. So We will actually be moving you into your very own really dedicated boardroom that's ready to serve this board and have it in the position of its authority and so it can project. And also bring our fellow countrymen in from the cold as it were over at Reservation Road and bring our servers here and begin to centralize our work here at MGIT, which is fantastic. And then also SBIT, Sabita, the SBITA, there you go. So with regard to that, Mary and her team and IT are migrating Springbrook to the most current version from carrying the 2013 version and others, which we have for many, many years. So now we're going to be on the current platform, delivering the highest level of customer service, both internally and externally, which is fantastic. And then tomorrow I have the pleasure of meeting with Judge Wiss for mandatory settlement conferences regarding tort claims by CalAm and the county tomorrow in San Francisco, and it will go amazingly. Thank you very much. That is all I have.
I'm glad you ended on that positive note. So from there, I'm going to go to committee, executive committee. The executive committee met and we had the agenda that came forward today and we've just gone through all of these points. I don't think there was anything else to report from that. Director Schreiner concurs. Budget and engineering committee.
The big thing that we just went over.
Right.
The $44 million.
The interfund loan was discussed at that meeting and brought forward to you today, which you approved. I believe that was the scope.
That was the entire
Of the meeting. M1 board member liaison is Director Moore.
Yes, so we have a meeting coming up next Monday, the 28th of October. I haven't seen the agenda yet. At our last meeting at the end of September, the main business item was this thing called a report of waste discharge. Now, this gets into some of the technical stuff. As I understand it, that is a sort of application to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. This is an effort that's being funded by CalAm. They're paying all the fees for the work that Monterey One Water is doing, but this is CalAm's hopes to be able to use the outfall to dispose of brine from their desalination project. I argued that the report of waste discharge, which is an indicated sort of application, was premature because there were a number of issues, environmental and other issues, that weren't fully developed as part of this process, and that the decision should have been tabled. Unfortunately, I lost on that vote. I was the lone no vote against it, but I did what I could on that. News at 11 as to how that proceeds and where that goes. We're continuing work with the Monterey County Water Resources Agency over the audit that was done by Rupa Shaw's, or under Rupa Shaw's office, forensic audit of 5 years worth of charges that Monterey One Water gave to Monterey County Water Resources Agency for the operation, essentially providing recycled water to 12,000 acres of agricultural production in and around Castroville. The forensic audit, you may have heard, reported that the auditor believed that Monterey One Water had overcharged the Monterey County Water Resources Agency by something along the lines of $1.2 million, mostly related to overhead and indirect costs. And as it turns out, in the agreement between Monterey One Water and Monterey County Water Resources Agency, the language in the agreement for how to deal with indirect and overhead costs was at least subject to some interpretation. which had been done by the financial manager at Monterey One Water, but maybe not 100% in accordance with the agreement. It also had a appendix, which was a example of how to calculate overhead charges. I looked at that example, and despite having a PhD in industrial engineering and applied math, I couldn't follow it. I'm sure Mary could if she studied it for a week or two. It was an incredibly complicated way of calculating overhead costs. And to let you know how Monterey One Water got to that, the prior process up until 2014 or 2015, when a revision to this agreement was written and this very complicated process was introduced, the way that Monterey One Water and Monterey County Water Resources Agency had agreed to account for overhead costs was to charge 10% of the consumption charge, essentially. And sometime in the mid-teens, the folks from Monterey County Water Resources Agency Board of Directors thought that that was not sufficiently detailed, a sufficiently fair way of allocating overhead costs. They had thought it was too high. An investigation showed that it might have actually been too low, but they went ahead and did this new agreement that then produced this quasi-optional but very complicated process. So where are we now? Both agencies have committed to a series of, as best we can schedule them, monthly meetings involving the two GMs, the two board chairs, and the two vice chairs to talk about the issues surrounding this forensic audit, the issues surrounding this agreement, which really needs some cleanup and some revision and some fixing, and issues around communications between the boards and also between respective individual staff members, because it turns out there was some miscommunications. I don't know how to exactly characterize it because I wasn't present specifically for those inter-staff communications, but there's some improvements that we're working on, we're making some progress on. The only thing I can say is that however I can give you is that it's clear from the discussions, both sides acknowledge that this is going to be this is not going to be a process resolved in 1 or 2 months. Particularly getting the agreement fixed is going to take longer. It might take 6 months, I don't know, it could take 2 years for all I know. I am termed out as board chair, so the Monterey One Water Board will have to make a decision sometime early winter as to whether to have the new chair and vice chair now take over on this particular interagency committee or to leave me on it since I started on it, and I have no idea where the board will go with that. But I am hopeful that Monterey One Water and Monterey County Water Resources Agency will in fact be able to work out their differences. And we have certainly asserted that we're not interested in sticking it to the farmers, nor are we interested in having our customers stuck too. So try and get to some happy medium that works for all parties. And then as to the billing snafu that we've talked about before, I don't really have any updates as to where we're going other than to acknowledge that REM has sent a letter and acknowledge that Paul Sciutto has seen a letter in which he proposes talking with Monterey One Water about the possibility of, for our 11,000 out of about 70,000 customers, taking over that entire billing process, which, you know, if you're one of our customers, you know that you pay our bills once a month. You also, every 2 months, potentially at least, write a check or do something to Monterey One Water. If we can negotiate successfully on this, you will no longer have to write 6 checks a year to Monterey One Water. It'll just be incorporated in the monthly bill that you pay to us, and we'll pay them, and there's a bunch of benefits from Monterey One Water that come out of this too. So I'm hopeful that we get to a good agreement on that, but again, news still 11. And that's my report.
That was very good. Okay, MCWD, Salinas Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency Steering Committee. As Ram already reported, we're all getting along, which is great. And we're cooperative, but the good things are the seawater intrusion model modifications that our EKI feeds into, works with the Salinas Valley Basin experts, they're happy with it. That what they see when it's running the model is it matches what the wells are showing. The line, the solid line matches those intrusion modeling that we use from looking at wells and looking at the model. So they're pleased. They're happy as campers. Now the next question is they're going to run the model to show what happens by 2070 if there's no projects. And they'll come show us what that is. And then the next thing is saying, well, what projects are we going to consider to run through the model? Feasibility doesn't seem to be a factor in that consideration, seems not to be, but that is where everybody is running to jump into. But we have a model that's good and reliable, sufficiently reliable to run proposed projects. I'm reading my notes just because they're clearer than my memory at this point. But the other thing was that there was some discussion because their next steps is to initiate discussions of demand management and use the results in initial feasibility studies of all projects or management actions. MCWD showed up at the table and said, you know, you guys have this big dream and you're going to look at all of these different projects that have semi been identified. They're not projects yet, but you're going to run them through your model and see what's happening. And then nobody's talking about what the cost and who's going to pay and all of the big questions that we as a board sit and ask. So MCWD, and I'm very proud to be sitting here and saying that we at least come to the table with a small project that will inject water back into the 900-foot aquifer, and that we are looking to replenish from our recycled water, from M1 water, what we don't sell, that we will put into the tank, into the well, put it down into the ground so that it's available for reuse. And while Salinas Valley Groundwater Basin, I did ask the question and I knew the answer was, when you run this through your model, what is it going to show? And they said nothing, because it's only less than 1,400, which I knew that answer. But my next question was, if there are 15 of these projects or some number of these projects and you all run them through the model, would you see a change? And should we be thinking about these kinds of projects? Which, as your board member on that committee, I think is important to consider. So if that's, thank you, Patrick, thank you, Ron, that's what we did.
So they are gonna look at costs and then how they're gonna collect the money.
Way down.
They're running the model.
They're running the model of feasibility, and then they're gonna decide whether or not it's financially feasible.
Yes, and there is lip service paid, it's not lip service, but at the, I'm trying to be polite. There is, you know, that, there is a concept of, you know, you should look at your resources that you have presently. And how do you maintain those resources that help to sustain the objectives of the Groundwater Sustainability Act, the Castroville project, there's the rubber dam, there's things that everybody's looking at, these little things, they don't get much discussion. They said we should be looking at these short-term things, but then, I don't know, at least they don't talk about it at this meeting that I attend. Patrick, you go to other meetings, maybe they do. But that is the big question, is everybody says, who's gonna pay? What's gonna be the ultimate cost? So you can run all these models, but if there's no financing or buy-in, what's gonna happen? So I really appreciate the board. I appreciate engineering, looking at projects such as what we can do as our agency to be part of the solution. helping to keep the Seaside Basin healthy because it runs into our basins. All of these things are things that we at least are addressing. And again, good job to our staff. Thank you. That's my report. Okay, longer than you needed perhaps. Board member request for future agenda. Brad, do you have anything you want to put on a future agenda? Other than the item you earlier talked about, which was the amount of money for board education at some point for the 2025 budget.
Yeah, maybe, and also setting some expectations for board members for ongoing, what's considered, education that we would hope that they would seek to receive. And I know we have those mandatory harassment trainings and all those other kind of things, but this is above and beyond that. Thank you.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, is that what you're asking for a board item,
He's asking for.
right? So an agenda item that will bring that back to the board. Yes. Okay.
And maybe how are you were gonna do that? I'm just out of curiosity, a part of that, a survey of what other comparable boards allocate for their board members for outside education.
Not to discuss a potentially future agenda item, but District of Distinction comes to mind.
What's that
This
other
is me
side of
dragging the horse to water.
When the other side of the building is done, you will get your,
Okay.
we have some bets,
Deal.
right?
Deal. Deal. Steak and I get a transparency certificate.
We'll see.
There are
Second quarter
Okay.
fiscal 25.
No way. No way.
Yeah, sorry, sister, it's done.
No,
Wait,
Okay,
you hear
so
this?
you have
Cast in stone.
2 requests for items on the agenda.
Well, that was just a tag on to the suggestion about board,
Education.
recommendations of
Yeah.
education. The other one that I would like to flag somehow, and not sure if it's here or budget and engineering, but the allowances for uncollectible when it comes to local developers. I appreciate it for customers. That makes some sense to me when somebody's not got the money to pay, but local developers.
That was in the audit line.
Yeah, well, let's,
If there's board
staff will
members.
generate an internal technical memorandum, we'll send that out to the board. And then if you guys have further questions, then we'll take it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem an agenda item. It's
You
report.
don't think it's an agenda, because it sounded like it's board discretion, is where I was thinking, it would cut them off, that I would consider it.
But let's see what staff comes up with.
Yeah,
Right.
let me tell you what it is. and then we
Okay.
can decide.
Let's see how we want to make
That makes sense. Yeah. Thank you.
Mhm. Thank you.
You guys all good on future? Okay, director comments. Director Emma Murrah.
Yes, I'd like to, again, thank staff for another great meeting in terms of getting the materials to us, and especially to Paula for accommodating my remote participation at the real last minute and getting the material together for me. So really makes it good. And again, I look forward to participating in person next month. Thank you.
Thank you for attending from a distant and a different time zone. Director Cortez?
I just want to thank the staff and just kind of think about Joshua and Adam Miller, I think it's his name.
Yes, it is.
Just how quickly 5 years goes by. And you just don't think about it.
Remember when he was a kid?
The point I try to make is that it goes very quickly, and just the camaraderie that's being shared and how we've improved in both accounting and O&M. You guys done a great job. Speaks a lot of your guys' leadership and the new folks that are coming up. So I just want to say thank you.
Director Moore?
Thank you, General. Thank you, staff. Thank you very much. Quite specifically, once again, thank you, Paula Riso, for the chocolate chip cookies, the other nice desserts, and thank you for emailing to Director Imamura a dozen of those virtual chocolate chip cookies. I'm sure he would enjoy them.
You'll be here tomorrow to pick up what's left.
Yes.
Definitely appreciate that.
Oh, no.
See who gets to them first.
Yeah, right, it's closed. And then, also I wanted to give a shout out in particular to President Morton. She sent me a very, very nice, thank you note, the other day, and that was very much appreciated. Oh, I didn't quite have my wife in tears, but it was.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. I can't believe you've been here for 30 years. Thank you, all of you, for your service. I'm cutting you off. Go.
I just want to mention, I went to a celebration of life for Bill Still Cronin, and I had heard that he had worked with M1 Water. I had pictured him being an executive, but I was mistaken. He was a member of the field crews, and it was really, really sweet to see how many field staff either are still active or had retired. They come together for his memory and some hilarious stories. He was very creative in his solution finding, and of course some of the staff were like, well, we can't tell his best stories because there's supervisors and managers in the room. I imagine there was some really interesting patch jobs occasionally, but the point is that he was instrumental in keeping Monterey Bay safe and clean from some of the things that happen in pipes when it comes to wastewater. And so I was really appreciating the whole M1 Water camaraderie and the field staff camaraderie there. And his love for his family came through so strong. But also, we had got to celebrate at the SCA meeting, kind of a passing of the torch. It was so sweet. It was a very difficult start to the meeting because of traffic being so bad to get out to Spreckles, who knew? But once we were there, I really appreciate people trying to come together and honoring our Paula Rizzo, executive assistant, for arranging those meetings for 20 years. 20 years. Who's counting? That's a lot. And passing the baton to Kelly. She does like she was ready and she is ready. She's excited. I appreciate you're gonna continue to guide her for a little while.
Yes, I will.
Cause it's a huge task, I could tell. Yes. Yeah, so thank you for that. And then, yeah, thanks everybody for all the work, especially coming up with these creative solutions in the water interfund loan, etc. And I think we all have some holidays coming up. I always feel like once we hit Diwali, Halloween, Dia de los Muertos, it's a full-on sprint through the new year. So happy Hologiveness, everybody. We're almost there.
My comments are brief. Thank you. Thank you to directors. I did send you a card, a heartfelt message in it to all of you. All of you make this a pleasure, and your contributions are all so from a different viewpoint than my training, my background, and so appreciative, and I learned from each of you. And so I honor each of you in the Water Professionals Appreciation Week, so I'm glad you got the cards. And staff, thank you for all the work today, every day. I hope I thank you every time I see you. I try to remember to everybody's name of your people that work for you, which it was now easier that I have this written list. Like, oh, I should just carry this around. But everybody is such a valued member of the team, and that shows again and again when we are acknowledging somebody, whether they're here 5 years, 20 years, 25 years, the feeling of the team and the investment of people personally in their job and the investment in each other is so obvious. And I can't praise you enough for how you all accomplish that. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's my comment, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Run the other way.
I can.
I'm sorry. I have court in the morning and I headed the other way.
And I wanted to ask you when you turn out.
Just want to remind you guys, Thursday, chili cook-off.
What time?
Be here by 11. You need to drop yours off in the morning. On your way in or whatever, over to the other side.
So good.
So just for you.